Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Countless Vlog. I'm your host, Justin Rich. My guest today is Catherine Rincon, mental health professional. I'm going to bring it right on. I want to talk mental health, coping strategies, ways to get therapy during this hard times, and advice to you out there, to those struggling. Thank you guys for watching, and make sure you guys subscribe to the Countless Vlogcast on YouTube. Make sure you guys support, and make sure you guys go to therapy.
Yep. Yes.
All right.
Please.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Hey, what's up, Rich? Nice to
All
see
right.
you.
So tell us about yourself. Give us a little background.
So I'm Catherine Rincon. I've been a licensed mental health counselor for a few years now, but have been in the counseling game for like 10 years or so. Yeah, mostly working with trauma and PTSD and children and adolescents for sure.
Great. So, in your experience, how has going to therapy helped you personally?
Yeah, going to therapy is very important, I feel personally, but I may be biased. But I feel like, especially being a clinician, just being a counselor and working with people, you kind of definitely have to have that objective, very healthy way of thinking. And so therapy is just a great way to do it. You just discuss things with a professional and you get your thinking becomes more in line with reality and with just kind of ways to kind of inspire you, if
Great.
that makes any sense.
So, how do we break the stigma of therapy, and why you recommend therapy to somebody out there?
Right. So there's a huge stigma, especially among people like us. So it's unfortunate. And so how do we break it? I feel like media right now is doing a great job at kind of normalizing therapy. Do you agree?
I definitely agree. Cause like I don't know, it just seems like it's a different time now. But
Yeah.
like the media makes it seem like, oh, you're crazy if you go to therapy, or like you're like there's something wrong with you. You know, they don't make it seem like, oh, you can heal from this too. It's better for you. You know.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And that's sad. But the stigma needs to be broken. And I know in a lot of the media that a lot of the kids that I speak to is becoming a little bit more normal to like just open up and talk about things, especially on social media too. So I think we just got to break it. How do
Yeah.
we do it though?
Yeah. So what are some issues you find in the Black community and Latino community with the that you find or like repeat itself?
The stigma itself is huge in the Black and Latino community, the POCs. Um, yeah, what do I? A lot of the issues, you know what it is? It's just a kind of like feeling like you have to just keep working and keep moving. I find that in a lot of Latino families, a lot of Black families, they don't really focus on any of the kind of maybe depression or sadness or anxiety that they're facing or the stress especially. They just keep it moving. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
definitely. Like it starts at home too. It's like your
Right.
mom is like, all right, you gotta clean this house, or you're gonna like do some chores. It's like, all right, that's your therapy right there. You're not gonna go talk to
Exactly.
somebody outside too, and like. It was if you with a family member too. You can't come to them and be like, I got issue with my uncle or my issue with my sister too, whatever family member it is. You have to go to like
Right.
outside source. So you know.
Exactly. And then I know that there's a lot of corporal punishment or the chancleta as we call it, or the belt that's used on us growing up, you know? We just kind of have to cope with all that as adults, you know? So, yeah, pretty much there's a big stigma and unfortunately when I do get a chance to really speak to people of color clinically, or even in times before when I used to work in communities, like the lower socioeconomic communities, I know that there's a lot of resistance to this like therapist, you know, and just kind of expression. But there's a lot of healing that comes with like therapy in all communities. So yeah,
Do
it
you
would be
think
really nice.
it's more finances? Do you think it's more like homegrown stuff, or you think it's like a mix of different things? I guess.
Actually, yeah. Unfortunately, there's like less access to quality mental health in a lot of these communities. So mainly, I know when I used to work in those communities, in the low SES communities, like we call it, there was just like all you get is this registered intern, like not a therapist that really works, that really has the experience to really like address it. And also, there's a lot of therapists that are white that are going into these communities and really trying to connect, you know? So we need more Black therapists. We need more affordable healthcare. We got, yeah, all that. What do you think?
I agree with you, especially the lower communities too. Is like they get ignored too, even though you work in them too. They still get ignored. Like funding doesn't go to them too. It's
Yes.
just they're just told like, oh, just get over it, or like you know, have a problem too. Even schools or outside with their friends too. Like
Yep.
especially with their friends too. Especially like I think like the age like adolescents like teenagers too was like hard for them to talk about too. Like oh you got to man up or something like that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, so it's crazy, you know.
Right. And then you could tell me also if there's this like expectation that men have to be men, you know what I mean? They
Yeah.
have to ignore all their how'd you deal with that? Or did you? I don't know.
I mean, for me, it's more like recently, like writing. I do like poetry now. Art is an outlet.
Nice.
This show is an outlet too. So it's like I went to therapy later on in life too, not the beginning. Actually, I had a therapist sixth grade too, but I was the
That's
one
awesome.
just like made fun of the therapist for like this is like stupid. So you know, but
And how did you get into therapy? I'm
I
curious.
don't know. I think I had like a breakdown. I was just like, all right, it's time to just like go now. So you know,
Yeah.
it's just
Okay.
like perfect time to go. You know, so
You know what's funny is that's a lot of the reasons why I get referrals from people of like maybe black or Latinos is that they've gotten to this point where they can't anymore. So they reach out to a therapist when they should be reaching out to a therapist when they're okay. You know what I mean?
But yeah,
So
so
that's interesting.
hopefully it starts like earlier, like the stigma breaks though, but
Yeah.
like earlier on in age too, so they don't have like deal with it like when they're adulthood too. It's like we're still dealing with stuff from
Yes.
our childhood, so it's like you know.
Yeah, and that's why I like to work with children and adolescents. I like to nip it in the bud early.
So what
But
are
yeah,
some methods to cope with mental health?
right. So I know a lot of the coping, like I know that a lot of people rely on these negative coping skills, like drugs or alcohol. Marijuana is a big one, which can help sometimes. I'm not gonna lie, but it shouldn't be the go-to. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of coping skills that will help you kind of like relax and put like the thoughts that come up, like maybe anxious thoughts or sad thoughts, to the side for you to just like be in the moment. I don't know if that's too hippie, but
No,
I know.
I feel what you're
Right.
saying. Especially like marijuana too, is still stigma around that too. Like
Yeah.
the conversation of that too, or using it recreational use too, you know, too. So
Right.
like
And I'm
personally,
not gonna.
yeah,
Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah. Go ahead. What were you gonna say? Sorry.
'Cause I'm not gonna lie. Like it's like not the worst one. You know. It's
Yeah,
it's prevalent.
I'm an advocate for like CBD now. CBD is like a great
Yes.
relaxer now too. So you know,
Right.
people are like, "Oh, you shouldn't do drugs." Dude, like, there's certain drugs you shouldn't do, like you know, like
Right.
certain things you shouldn't do. But like, it's like there's ways out there too for you know, like there's like, people out there that like or advocate for this kind of stuff too, like
Yeah.
recreational.
And when it's dosed correctly, like
Mhm.
it can really help people like get over anxiety and some of
Yeah,
those feelings. You know. So it's pretty cool.
yeah.
But a lot of like standard coping skills would be like breathing or just kind of like meditation's a big one. Even though, do you feel like it's a hippie thing though? What do
I
you think
mean,
about
like I
meditation?
do a lot of like chanting. I want to try yoga. I
Excellent.
want to try, you know, like different stuff too that the black people don't do. Like white people only do this too. Like I do a lot of like traveling. I do a lot of like sports. So I
Nice.
want to try yoga too. Like it's different.
Oh,
Like have you tried yoga or recommended yoga? So
actually, you know what? I do yoga, and I can tell you that I don't have very many yoga clients. Like people that do yoga are like a very small population in mental health. You know what I mean? So yoga helps, and I love that you're woke enough to say that. You know?
I mean, yeah, it's like a good like it's like a stigma still, but like all this stigma has to be broken too. It's like it's ways to cope. You
Yes,
know, it's like you know.
totally. Yeah, I hope that one day everyone's doing yoga.
Yeah, everybody does. Speaking of stigmas and like a race thing too, why? What are some like other issues you find in the black community too? When like how have you helped people deal with like race too in the Latin community and the black community?
Totally. So firstly, I know that a lot of this it's interesting because a lot of the same issues are prevalent in all races, but it's like 20 according to Columbia University, excuse me, it's 20% more people of color are 20% more likely to really kind of suffer from like the severe mental health issues because they're not addressing it accordingly. You know what I mean? So there's stress, there's domestic violence, there's all kinds of issues in all populations, but in the black community, I feel like it should be like people should reach out more so that it doesn't. I don't know if that makes sense. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it's hard though too because like
Hmm.
they could be facing it during like everyday issues too. So it's hard to
Yes.
stop to realize you're going through this too. It's like, oh, this is normal. I'm being like abused, like sexually, domestically too. So it's like
Right.
how do I like this stop? And what if somebody in your family like abusing you like verbally or physically too? It's like you can't really stop like to think about what's going on too. So,
Right.
how do
So they kind of minimize it to themselves.
like we were talking earlier about like how we with working to just continue to work and pull through, you know.
Right. And so that's the way. And so it's interesting because I've had like people of color like speak to me about their experiences, and then I tell them like, listen, you were traumatized. And they like realize it later, and it's really sad, but it's that's the way it is now.
Can you define trauma too? Because trauma is a very like broad word, but how would you define trauma?
Now I know that trauma is relative to anybody. So a girl that gets her spice latte knocked over one day and like people laugh, like that could be trauma for her. But trauma could just be anything that really kind of shakes you enough to like view the world differently, and also things that come up too often and get in the way of like your perspective now. I don't know if that made any sense, but
that makes sense. That makes sense,
right
too, because I think a lot of people aren't clear on what trauma is, so they may not realize they're going through trauma too, or they have faced it in the past. So.
Totally, like just women that have been like sexually abused as a young adult, and then it being normalized in their household, and then they're older now with attachment issues and stuff.
And what about too, like catcalling too? That's like what you call that trauma too, like especially in the community, the Black community too.
Yeah.
Like I'm from like Jersey too. I know about you too, but we have like especially in urban areas too. Like men are like the egos, and they're like I don't want to say bold. It's like their egos too. It's like they're not taught how to treat women. Too. So
exactly. Yeah, and it's normal in like in the cultures we grow up in for women to be more subservient, for men to be very aggressive, mostly because men aren't handling their own stuff, you know. So they take it out. But it's still interesting, and I'll segue because now there's this concept of racial trauma, of like of trauma of just being being a person of color that grew up with generations of slavery and just being kind of made to feel lesser, you know? So that in itself is a trauma too. And it kind of plays out like even in graduate school, I thought I had to talk whiter, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, that's code switching, yes.
Right. So that's just a product of that, you know? It's interesting.
Yeah, I feel that too. Because like where I grew up is like suburban areas. I mean, it's diverse too, but now there are all the stories coming out too about race that were like you know buried underneath. So it's like all this stuff coming out because white people are like blind to this kind of stuff too sometimes.
Completely.
Too. And like we know what's going on too. Like we just want to live our lives too, but you know, it's hard sometimes. So
I'm really kind of empowered at the fact that a lot of my like white colleagues are trying to really understand now that it's like open, like now that it's like a topic, people are really trying to understand their own biases and privileges. You know what I mean? And I just hope that Latinos will do it too. You're saying?
So hopefully people aren't ignorant too, or like people are like calling them out on their ignorance too, not in like a rude way too, but just like this is how it like makes a person feel, that how you act too, or like they say like white silence is like black violence basically, you know. Like so if you don't say anything too, you make it worse, and often the police that say stuff too.
Exactly. That's true. So everybody has to like say something. I agree.
Let's talk a little bit over here now. Talk about a little like black on black crime, Latino crime too. Like, because I know like that's not talked about as much. Like the policing too. We'll talk about that in a little bit in the episode later. But the policing, but right now let's talk about black on black crime, Latino crime that goes on too.
Are you saying kind of like when you bring up that black when they bring up like the whole like police? Wait, are you saying like?
Yeah, like it seems to get ignored too. Like people are like, it happens a lot too. Like people are like, people want to talk about police on like POC crime, but they don't want to talk about like POC on POC crime. You know.
You know what? And that's true. Statistically, crime is prevalent all over, but it's just the nuance of police on black. It's just the fact that it's a race, that it's just race, and it's a product of these years of kind of like ignoring. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's that. Like it's the argument that black on black crime and Latino crime happen is a way to minimize the fact that there's police out here that are like really kind of targeting black people.
Yeah, like a lot of people are saying like the white police, they feel like it's because it's that they attack each other too, that is right for them too, so it shouldn't be a big deal, you know. So you know.
Exactly, it's like a minimizing thing. I mean, I wonder if you agree.
Yeah, I think it is though, because like I just think people don't want to face their issues, basically, too. But
That's the product of
people are
it.
growing up too. People like
Yeah.
slowly like waking up too. It's like movie Get Out kind of. Two people just like take a flash of their picture and like people are waking up.
Yes.
So
Yes, actually. Oh
yeah,
my God, I had my own wake up moment too. So everybody's doing it. But it's
yeah,
so funny to comment on what you said about police. I feel like police are overutilized because we don't have the mental health
hmm
resources and the rehabilitation resources that are necessary to like address everything. So it's true what you say. Like
yeah.
people aren't just coming out like aren't being honest with their own
Mm.
issues. Yeah.
And I'll to talk about this a little bit too, because you work with youth too. So like school therapy too. Like
Yeah.
so I don't know exactly what I want to ask though, but like how do you think like school therapy is in general?
It's funny because I'm also a school counselor for
Okay.
K through 8, and it's nice to address students in that environment because they have their classes, but they also have their mental health counselor that they can really have these conversations with. So these children that will one day be adults like us and like really move communities, you know, they're having these dialogues about race, about stress, about mental health. So they'll grow up to be like really cool leaders one day, hopefully. So that's a good setting for it.
Yeah, so let's talk a bit about therapy and the digital age too, and virtual therapy too, because all like going on to the protests and the coronavirus too. So, what are some ways people can get therapy without being able to go to into in person?
This is actually the coolest time, to be honest. Maybe because I'm lazy. Because you all you have to do is like go to your computer and talk to a therapist nowadays. And some of these online therapies are offered at a lower rate in some settings. So it's a pretty cool thing that this is an outlet now. It's always been, but now it's a more prevalent outlet to speak to a provider.
And
I don't know if
for
that's the
those that can't afford therapy, they don't know where to look to. What are some resources you can like point people to in terms of like finances and like finding therapy?
Now I know there's a lot of programs that offer like sliding scale. Well, a lot of therapists in general in private practice, my practice included, Happy Thoughts Mental Health. That's what it's called. It's shout out.
And,
Yeah, a lot of practice like offer sliding scale deals. Not all of them, and some of them, you know, they accept insurance or they will direct you to foundations that are offering to pay for sessions, especially for people of color. I know that there's therapy for Black girls. That's a foundation that I believe is offering like to pay for sessions, and also the Boris Henderson Foundation, which I'm also listed under.
okay.
Shout out.
That'd be kind
Yeah, and Open Path Collective, I believe they're called. So yeah, so there's definitely ways to access the services, but to be honest, I think that there should be more of a view of it being necessary so that people will invest in talking to a good counselor, just like they invest in their medical care.
That's a good transition too, because next question is how is mental health industry and mental health in general changed over the last 2 or 3 years?
Right. I know when I was studying, there was a lot of white guys
Mm.
making like forming these
And
theories.
how did you
Yeah.
like feel with that? Were you like intimidated, or like what did you feel like as a
To be
therapist?
honest, I'll be real. I was drinking the Kool-Aid, you know what I
Mm,
mean?
mm,
I didn't see it as a problem until I
mm,
started like stepping into these communities and
mm,
knowing that I couldn't talk to women of color who had like 3 children and no husband, you know, they were doing it themselves.
yeah.
I couldn't talk to them about like taking an hour to meditate, you know what I mean? Or to like, you know, I couldn't talk to them in the way
Yeah,
that these
I
like
know what you
standard.
mean because it's like every outdated thoughts too.
Right.
It's very like whitewashed. So
Right, whitewashed. Because how can someone self-actualize if they don't know where they're getting their next meal? You know what I
yeah,
mean,
because
or all this stuff.
we have to think in reality too. You know, we can't think of suburban mother versus like the person in like the urban areas with like 3 kids, like you said, two in the same realm.
Right, exactly. It would be like naive to
Mhm.
approach those two in different ways. Luckily, I don't remember the question. You know.
Oh no, we just started conversating. The questions are just
Right,
gone. Now we're just conversating now. So it's basically
right,
like how has it
right.
changed over the years?
Yeah.
Mental health therapy has
So
changed.
I know now with practice and with training, there's a lot of views of cultural, like honoring cultural differences and even religious differences. And then, of course, viewing the person not as like crazy, but seeing them as like a victim of any past traumas that they've experienced, you know. So there's more of a trauma focus, there's more of a cultural diversity focus in mental health now, and I really like that. I don't know if you agree.
Oh yeah, definitely. So what are some like ways people can like get help after therapy too? Like going to therapy is one thing. Like have say if like we have a therapy session, like somebody's watching this like 1-on-1 too. So what are some ways people can cope after it? Because I know a lot
Right.
of therapists give their clients the homework or per se, but what would you say to that?
That's right. Now, aside from therapy, it's important to also be spiritually sound. So, like
Mhm.
going to church or even going to social groups, like that's a great way to kind of just like do continue the work that
Mhm.
you do in therapy, you know, or just like any or just getting involved in things that you feel passionate about. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that's great too. It's always good to have an outlet too. Like
Yeah.
for me, it's like sports, music,
Yes.
poetry, stuff like that. What about you? What would you say for like some of your outlets too?
That's beautiful. You know what? I'm old. I like play with my kids and I'm good, you know, or I'll play video games. But I know that sports is huge and yoga is my jam.
Yeah, definitely yoga. We gotta tell you more people to do yoga too. Like if we have like a therapy
Yes.
class, a yoga session, that'd be great too. You know,
That would be like perfect. I think you
we,
should market that.
we should start a yoga slash therapy
Yes.
session.
Let's do it.
All right, let me see what else. Oh yeah, so in terms of like what you saying, like when you first came in, there was like a lot of like white men in the industry too. So advice out there to like just talk to like the black women out there, Latino women out there, black men, Latino men out there that want to study to be a therapist or maybe afraid or like in high school now not sure what to do or like in college. What advice would you give them?
Right. Yeah, no. I feel like a lot of it's helpful to view mental health therapy as like just like a way of I don't know. That's a good question, you know? How to motivate people of color to like
Mhm.
pursue. I feel like now they should be called to action, to be honest. Like they should be inspired by the fact that we don't have like black and Spanish therapists as much that with licenses in the community. So we should come together and like really like they should like do the school. They should like go
Yeah.
for it.
So talk a little about the process too, because you've been through the process, like
Yeah.
studying and all that, applying too. Because you could give like a little like spiel about like the process of like applying and then studying and all that. That'd be great too.
And are you thinking about it? You should.
I am thinking about it too, but then I'm like, oh, this is like, well, for me, it's like finances and like student
Of course.
loans, and like I have a degree already. It's just like a whole bunch of stuff too. But
Do you feel like yeah, do you feel like those are the factors that are kind of like keeping people of color out of school? Because I think so.
I think it is too, and it's like we're not as encouraged to do that too. We're more encouraged to do like essential work too. Which
Yes.
shout out essential workers that like should be paid more too. But like
Right. Definitely.
like bus drivers or like minimum wage job. Nothing wrong with those too, but we need to like split it up too. You know, we need to like be like
I
split up
agree.
talent too. Like a lot of people are talent too. Like a lot of people are like empath too. Like a lot of empathy too. So they're able to like
Yeah.
listen to their friends, give them advice, and help them out too. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Like I know going through school, my parents didn't think I was really doing anything. They thought I was like learning to be a hustler. You know what I mean? But no, I went to school. Like you get your bachelor's, then you get your graduate degree. And it's so funny because I was like the darkest person in my class.
Oh, yeah.
So
I can
that's
relate to
pretty
because I study
right.
television, so it's like I think that's another other thing too. Like going to school and like when music occurs into like we don't see many people too, so it's like
Yeah.
and we talk about issues too. It's like oh you don't know anything too, or like you know so
It's true. It's discouraging.
yeah.
But
So
no.
but like
Mhm.
it's good we're talking about this now. Hopefully we're encouraging people too to like watch this now too. So you know
That would be fantastic. And
yeah,
I appreciate you doing this too.
yeah.
It's a good way. But no, yeah, I feel like there's a change coming
Yeah.
if it's not already happening.
Yeah.
I'm very encouraged by what's going on.
All right, let's get into like the deep conversation now, like really deep conversation. Like, we're ready? Like, all right, so policing and mental health too, like in terms of like the stresses. Say somebody's having like a panic attack or mental breakdown in public too. What are some ways you could recommend, or like some ways we should look forward to instead of like policing to like deal with like people or help people out too that need like help set up
Yeah.
police.
Now I know there's a big move. There's a big request for like rehabilitation in lieu of just of like prison system
Mm,
or it you know right like
yeah.
the progressives that are coming up. So I feel like in theory, it would be very nice to have a group of clinicians just like respond to calls about domestic violence or just but I know that we have crisis teams now, and I used to work for the Broward Crisis team, so I know that implementing that is going to be harder than
So, can you talk a
right.
can you talk a little more about that? What the Broward Crisis community was?
Right. I used to work for the Youth Emergency Services of Broward, and that's just conducting crisis calls for kids that express suicidal or homicidal ideation. So a lot of the kids that we were seeing just needed the help. They just needed to see a counselor, really. And I know that when police would typically respond to these, just from my own witnessing, you know what I mean? They didn't have the right frame of mind to address it. So I can see why people are calling for more of a mental health approach to these kind of calls. You know what I mean? But at the same time, a clinician like me will respond, and then without law enforcement, it's a danger. You know. I know it's straight from the topic, but it's just triggered. You triggered me.
Great. So yeah,
right?
So yeah, like in terms of like defunding the police too, it's like whatever things about that. Oh, we gotta get rid of the police too. That's not it. That's not it. So it's
exactly
like those funds and like putting into like programs that need like funding too. Like you said, the Broward Crisis too, or community centers too, or like having it's like a one-on-one counseling for teens that can't afford it too. So
yes, and I can imagine that the program that I used to work at, the Yes Team they call it, with the proper funding and the proper that we would have done a lot of work. You know, we would have a lot more work, because a lot of the clinicians that I work with, they take their job seriously and they do good work. But it's you know, with more funding. So yeah, and if people had the housing and the income coming in, you know, like police wouldn't be as necessary. That's how I see it, but maybe I'm naive. What do you think?
I mean, the police, like, we know what they're there for, basically. To be honest with you, we know they're there for. They're not there to help like mentally ill people too. They're not professionally trained for that too. You know.
Right. Yeah, and I know that a lot of cops, they only really take like one training, and then now they're qualified. You know, I don't want to talk bad, because cops are doing what they got to do.
Yeah. It's not bad talking. It's just like, you know, we need to have certain people in certain positions that are able to do these type of things too, you know. So.
Exactly. I agree completely. And more funding for programs in the community.
Definitely. More teacher money too. So shout out teachers too.
Yes, please. Shout out to teachers.
So in terms of a new normal, what is a new normal for you, and like for other people out there too? Like what should people be doing now in the present time to like move forward and like have a better future for themselves, or like more people like living their dream basically? How should people do that now?
So I know that it's a big adjustment for everybody with isolation. Everybody's home. Everybody's like trying to deal with the new normal, right? But I hope that people will still maintain their ability to be social and to express these feelings of stress and anxiety that they're feeling before they take it out violently or aggressively towards other people and themselves. What do you think? Like, has it been hard for you?
In the beginning, it was. I was like the reason I started this show, because like Instagram too. A lot of people were going online too, having guests on too, but it was a lot of like bullshit. So I was like, let me do something real, like talk to businesses, talk to mental health professionals, different people too that can actually help people out too. Like people watching, like actually like learn something and like be encouraged too. You know, instead of like watching like reality shows. Like, dude, that's good for like if you want to like believe your brain. It's good to have something like you on too, like that actually professional, like actually
I agree.
Like, real life stuff too. I'm like
right.
I'm 29. I'm not with this internet stuff though.
For real?
No, I like it though, but I'd rather go outside and like enjoy life. You know,
I agree.
Some people are stuck in social media age too. I talk about that too a little bit too. Social media, mental health too. I didn't think about that.
Oh man, it's so funny because the school that I work at hired me because they were seeing a lot of youth acting out behaviorally, expressing suicide more. You know what I mean? And it's because of social media. Like a lot of kids are getting exposed to things that they shouldn't be exposed to. Maybe that's old of me to say.
No, it's good though. I'm a teacher too, like so. This is it's just like I see it too. Kids just want to go on social media, go on like they want to rest of their work so they can go on a computer game too, instead of like, oh, let me go outside and like play a game, or like with my friends who just want to play games. So you know,
nothing
wrong with that too. But it's like you have to have like a moderation of it too. You gotta have.
I agree, and a lot of parents are so busy that it's hard for them to regulate, or maybe they don't understand the tech. But yeah, I agree. That sucks.
So let's
should
talk a
be.
little about people that don't want to go to therapy or get help. What do you say to them too? And what are some ways they can get through life not without therapy, or ways they can cope?
Right. I think it's up to everybody to kind of educate the person next to them and like say that mental health is the same as physical health, the same as spiritual health. It's important. And you can and honestly you will not be able to like go past a certain level of functioning if you don't have the proper mental health. So the people that still stick to the stigma, just go to a session.
Hmm.
Just try it out. You know what I mean? That's what I say.
Oh yeah, part two of that question. What if it doesn't work for them too? What are some other resources like you said, like yoga or other outlets too?
Right. Some people are not ready.
Mm.
And that's okay. That doesn't make them any lesser. I've spoken to people that I knew were not ready to take part in the counseling process. So just, as long as they're speaking to somebody, they got to speak to a friend, to a pastor, maybe to somebody to a mentor, or again, yoga would be amazing. But I know that it's hard for a lot of people to really get the mental clarity that you need for yoga. Right?
But yeah, I when I went to California for the first time, that was like they offered yoga where I stayed at too, and they was
Nice.
like, all right, let me try this. Like, it was free, so I went. And everybody here, like, I think people here prices are like, I don't want to pay for that too, because I mean, what if it doesn't work out too? I'm like that
Right.
kind of too, because I think it's like a human instinct. It's like, oh, I don't want to pay.
Yeah.
What if it doesn't work out too? Like, it's like therapy too. Like, it's like you're investing your hard-earned money too. Where it's like it's something you're
Exactly.
not sure about too. So it's like, but
It's true.
I don't
That's
know. Like,
true.
I'm not advocating for like free stuff in terms of like doctors and therapists. I know you guys work hard too, but like,
Right. No, but I know that you're pointing out the fact that
yeah,
that's a real mindset about it.
mhm, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you guys like offer like trials too, like maybe like a one-time thing too, and after that, if it works out, then you like put them on like a pay scale or something like.
Right. Well, I know that my practice, I give them. There's a free session
Mm,
with, just to see if you like it, if it's good, because I know that people really should get a therapist that they can talk to, and so that it's not going to necessarily be the first one that you see, whatever makes you feel comfortable.
yeah.
So I know that I offer one free session, but I hope that healthcare will get to a point where it's not going to be such a burden to afford
Mm,
therapy.
yeah.
Do you think that's gonna happen?
I don't think so, because I think people are so greedy, especially in America.
Oh
It's like
yeah.
everybody sees the green now too. It's just like unemployment now too. It's like they cut out benefits now, so it's just like I don't really
Yeah.
see it happening too. I think we guys have to fight for it more too. It's gonna take a while though, but
Right.
with all
Yeah.
the protests going on and all this like fight, I think it's gonna happen
It's
eventually.
moving towards it, right?
It'll change
Yeah.
too. It's like
Let's hope so.
yeah. So there's always more people like for and against it too. So like this like but voices against it are gonna fade out. So
Right? Let's hope so. Just kidding.
yeah. For the
Yeah.
final question, anything else want to talk about or discuss? Anything topic you want to discuss?
Yeah. So I know that I myself have kind of like as a Afro Latina, that's how I identify
Mhm.
because I'm Dominican.
Okay.
I know that I had to kind of wake up to a lot of inner racism that I had just growing up. I mean, I don't know if you see my hair, but it's very kind of white standard.
Yeah.
Right. So I just kind of wanted to get a feel for it from you as well, your journey throughout this whole like awakening about race.
I
I'm
mean, yeah,
curious.
from like I can agree with that too. From like your hair, the way you dress, to
Mhm.
I've always been a person against the system, so I'm like, all right, I'm gonna wear the hair I want. I'm gonna wear whatever the hell I want to. I don't care too. So it's
That's
like
awesome.
I learned show notes. I'm gonna do whatever I want to. It's like being a teacher is like, oh, you have to dress a certain way too.
Right.
If you're a black male or like a female, like or a black woman or a Latina woman, it's like you have to be act a certain way too. It's like
Yep.
or they
Yeah.
look at you a certain way too. So.
Exactly. To adapt, I would say
Yeah.
maybe. But I love the fact that it's starting to be like normal now. No, not
Yeah.
normal, but it's media is starting to depict
Mhm.
people like us. And
Yeah.
it's nice. So
But
that's all I just wanted to say.
yeah, but also too, it's like you have to be yourself too. It's like you said, like times your hair, for example, too. It's like you grew up. Did you watch like Disney too, or like you're told to act a certain way too, or like you see it
Yep.
on like TV too? It's like, oh, like you don't know about curly hair or like how to wear your hair a certain different way too. So
Right.
and it
But I
makes
like the fact that I don't. You're saying?
What were you gonna say? Sorry.
No, you go first.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say that it carries into to adulthood too.
Yes, completely. As evidenced by us, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that I don't have to. I don't feel. I don't feel pressured to perm my daughter's hair. Like she's going to have normal hair, and because of that, like she's going to live her life as the way that she is, and that's going to be a generational thing. We'll see. You know, more people like us being normalized.
So what can we do for like our youth now to make it like a better world for them moving forward? So I know they're fighting too. What can we do for them moving forward?
Right. Education. That's what I say.
Yeah.
Right.
So
and
in
just
terms of like education, do you mean like the standard education, the old school like books? Oh yeah, can you elaborate a little bit on that too, please?
Yeah, and it's well, as far as kind of like being real, transparent about what's going on and how and what history was really like outside of what they've showed us in school. Don't get me started on that. But I know that you could probably comment better on education itself. Like
now there's so many documentaries now, like 13th and the way they see it on Netflix too. So like I think like showing them more like that kind of stuff too, you know, it's like the real kind of stuff too, or like history, all these statues that came down during the protests too, like the history of that too, why it's bad too, or like the more heroes too. Like we're talking about, like we learned about Malcolm X, Martin Luther King too, Rosa Parks too. But who else was helping out during this time too? You know,
right? They're learning about these people, the real story, not like what we were shown.
So.
But yeah, that's amazing. But I know as a counselor, I'm able to like I have these conversations, but I wonder what people in education or people in other settings how they can contribute and empower the youth. What do you think?
I just think like just give them like different like perspectives of different like parts of history too, from all angles, all the cultures angles too. Teach kids about their history and their culture, you know, the real history and culture, you know.
Completely.
Have more events, have more speakers come in to like make it wide open to ask the kids questions, have the kids ask questions too, like.
Yeah, exactly. That dialogue.
Curious, yes, of course.
For sure. And then we can vote as well.
Yeah,
we gotta vote.
Of course. Make sure you guys vote too.
Yes, please. And that's it.
Yeah, so to wrap it up too, could you give advice out there to people that are struggling, unsure about the future, and just like whatnot? Give them like a direction if they're like stuck, please.
Right. Now I know that a lot of people are discouraged, especially clients of mine of color, and then even white clients, you know. But America is a fairly young society. There's societies like in Europe that are a little bit more social, a little bit more kind of united. America's a young society, and we're growing, you know, and these dialogues are happening. So. And generations to come are not going to be powerless to change this. You know what I mean? So things are changing, and even in life is cyclical. So there have been times like these of revolution in within our own country that have caused change. So things will be better soon if we just keep opening up dialogue and doing what we can.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I don't think things are gonna change. So I think a lot of people are fighting for the all lives matter kind of stuff and all that. I think that's why they're still fighting too. They know it's gonna change too. It's inevitable too. So it's not going backwards. It's not gonna go back to what it was. It's like,
that's true.
It's not gonna happen. So
and people know that, right? Yeah. Like everybody
knows it too. You know, both sides. Sir, I'm not a divider though, but people look like to pick sides. So
exactly. Tribalism, but you know that's something else. But no, that's cool.
This will be part 1 of our conversation. Do we get another part 2 later?
That'd be nice.
The specific topic, that'd be great. But thank you for coming on, sharing your expertise, experience.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for doing this. It's really cool.
This has been the Countless Vlogcast with my guest Catherine Rincon, mental health professional. I'm Justin Rich. This has been the Countless Vlogcast. Make sure you guys subscribe on YouTube. Also, what are your social media? Which social media? People can find.
Oh yeah, so I'm on Twitter.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. Happy Thoughts MH. That's me on Twitter, and my website is happythoughtsmh.com. So yeah, check me out.
All right, guys. Thank you for watching, guys. Make sure you guys subscribe and watch it again.